G'day and welcome to a special edition of the Environment Quarter. I'm Conor Duffy here at the Australian Museum in Sydney. In a moment we'll speak with the museum's leading entomologist, Dr. Dave Britton, on the secret life of Australian cicadas. And we'll travel to Tasmania, where environmentalists are closing in on a noxious weed plaguing Tasmania's west coast.
What we're trying to do is remove the sea spurge out of the southwest conservation area and the World Heritage area.
Wind farms have been blamed for everything from migraines to sleep and heart problems. But health officials have released documents showing there's no credible evidence they make people sick. That's been backed up by a coalition of 20 health groups. Marsha Osborne works the land in the shadow of wind turbines at this property near Canberra. She produces fine wool and has found the wind farm makes rural life richer.
We couldn't believe someone was going to pay us to tolerate the wind.
Mrs. Osborne says there have been no health impacts.
I think people can talk themselves into an illness very easily.
Wind farms have been much maligned, but the New South Wales Health Department says the fears are not scientifically valid. The assessment is in documents released under Freedom of Information to Friends of the Earth.
We feel that the assessment by New South Wales Health is actually quite damaging to the anti-wind, that is the fear campaign that's been run over the past year.
The turbines have also been given the thumbs up by a coalition of 20 health organisations.
Well, there have now been 13 reviews published all around the world of the evidence about whether wind farms make people sick, and all of those reviews have concluded that there is no credible evidence that they do.
With wind farm developments planned across the country, state governments are being asked to justify tough new restrictions.
Well, I always like the old Bob Carr quote that you put windmills across the whole of New South Wales, kill every kookaburra in the state, and still not do much about baseload electricity generation.
Dr. Sarah Laurie from the Warbra Foundation, a key group pushing against wind turbines, says farmers are being driven from the land.
We need to do the science. People are getting sick. In some instances, they're being forced to abandon their homes.
The Warbra Foundation was set up with funding from Peter Mitchell, a significant fossil fuels investor. Cicadas are rarely seen apart from the fragile shells they leave behind. Their loud and spirited song conjures up visions of summer. But this year, the cicada chirp has been less audible. Dr. Dave Britton is one of Australia's leading entomologists, and I spoke with him earlier. Dr. Dave Britton, one might say that cicadas aren't as prevalent or at least as loud as they were 20 years ago. Has Australia's cicada population got smaller?
I think certainly in inner urban areas on the east coast cities there has been a drop in the number of cicadas. Some species are still doing okay. They tend to be species that have nymphs that are happy feeding on trees that are introduced species and can survive in parkland in the middle of cities. But a number of more specialised species, the larger ones, have disappeared altogether from the middle of our cities. The other thing is too with cicadas is that they tend to be cyclical. So some years you'll have huge numbers appearing, other years there'll be hardly any. And that's a function of having a long life cycle where the nymph spends most of the time underground, and we really don't know how many are there until we get to a good summer.
And cicadas have quite a distinctive sound. What do we know about how they make that noise?
Well, cicadas, like all insects, have a hard external skeleton, and part of that skeleton is modified to form a timbal which buckles with muscles on the inside of the cicada pull it. And it's very similar to this kid's toy here, where you can see the metal flexes in and out and makes a clicking noise, except in a cicada it's doing it thousands of times per minute to make that noise that we all know, and it's varying how it buckles them, and it makes very distinctive songs, and each species has its own song.
And on that, I think there's more than 200 cicada species in Australia. How do we identify the most common one that most people would hear in their backyards in summer?
Well, most of the big common ones in Sydney are very easy to identify by their song once you've seen one singing. And of course that doesn't always happen. But even a lot of kids are kind of familiar with cicadas because they have this colourful common names. So for instance, the common cicada that occurs in the middle of Sydney and in other cities along the east coast is the greengrocer. It has a green form. Also occurs has a yellow form which is called the Yellow Monday, and another form which is called the Masked Devil. And but it has such a distinctive song, and it's so loud during summer that most people will know it straight away once they hear the song.
Dr. Britton, what other cicadas can you show us?
Well, here's a couple of examples that are from around the general sort of Sydney area and the coast of New South Wales. This is the cherry nose, which is no longer found in urban conditions in Sydney. It's usually around the outskirts. Its beautiful wings and markings. And this is possibly one of the largest cicadas that occurs in Australia, the double drummer.
Wow,
very, very, very loud cicada. And again, it only occurs in relatively pristine bushland.
Cicadas obviously pose no risk to humans, but what damage are we doing to their environment?
I think the principal damage, as with many of Australian plants and animals, is through land clearance and for changing use in land as well. So improvement of land for agriculture is often damage to the habitat for a lot of species of Australian insects, and cicadas would certainly be an example of that. Some of them are probably closely associated with certain sorts of plants, and if those plants are removed, it's no longer suitable for cicadas to survive.
Do you think we'll see a renewal in cicada numbers?
Well, not in the inner part of cities. It's not really likely to happen. But I think, once we get into a proper warm summer, unlike what we've experienced on the East Coast this year, we'll probably get another mass emergence of cicadas, and everyone will be wanting to move away from them again.
Dr. Dave Britton, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Conor.
Heading to the other end of the country now, an invasive weed found around Australian coastlines has been the target of an adventurous volunteer workforce on Tasmania's rugged west coast. 5 years after the work to remove sea spurge began, it's now close to being declared a success. Selena Bryan reports from remote kidney-shaped lagoon.
Kidney-shaped lagoon on Tasmania's rugged west coast is only accessible by helicopter. A group of volunteers who dropped into the remote spot called it home for 10 days. They're among more than 60 people who've been pulling out sea spurge and marram grass over summer.
What we're trying to do is remove the sea spurge out of the southwest conservation area and the World Heritage area.
Sea spurge is highly invasive, taking over sand dunes and changing their ecology. On the west coast, it threatens Aboriginal cultural sites and fragile coastal landscapes, as well as habitats for rare shorebird species. Over the past 5 years, the eradication program has seen big results.
Before, there was spurge all over the place. Now it's basically clear, and beaches that we took 3 or 4 days to clear, or dunes, and we're now doing a couple of hours.
By the end of this season, volunteers will have removed more than 10 million sea spurge plants. Nearly all the 600 kilometres of coastline between Macquarie Harbour and Cockle Creek will be cleared. The work can be tough. It's done in all weather and over some rough terrain.
It is an incredible commitment. People are taking 10 days out of the time. There's people from New South Wales, there's people from South Australia, there's people from Tasmania. They're providing all their own resources.
For first-time volunteer Emma Haley, it's been a rewarding experience, despite some not-so-welcome locals.
I got bitten by a lot of march flies and mosquitoes, 2 jack jumpers.
A small price to pay for a spectacular view from the office.
Twin ringtail lemurs are the latest arrival at the Canberra Zoo and Aquarium. The newborn Madagascan primates are part of a national breeding program which has seen numbers climb in Australia and abroad. Given the species' threatened status, zoo staff were delighted with the surprise delivery.
Twins can happen in zoos in captivity. It's certainly a possibility and can be done successfully. There's only about a 30% chance for it to happen though. So for us it was very exciting. We were quite surprised. We thought we were only getting one, and we had 2 pop up. So for us it's double the excitement.
Zookeepers are waiting to find out the gender of the pair before they're named. Flooding rains on one side of the country and bushfires on the other. The weather in Australia this summer is something to talk about. And the ongoing debate over the climate is moving from politics to culture, with some of Australia's top artists taking part in a group exhibition titled Climate Change. Reporter Justine Kerr took a look at the Melbourne show.
I guess the idea behind it was to grab together 10 very important Australian artists, ranging in age from 28 right up to 83, and get them to create a work based on the idea of climate change. Most of them were incredibly excited but found that it was going to be very visually challenging to actually create a work based on the idea. But as you can see from the works, they're absolutely superb and stunning.
Each artist spent a month at least in the studio painting every day, so you're bringing a lot to it.
People used to say to me, where's the most amazing place you've been? And I'd say, oh, well, everywhere's amazing for this reason and that reason. And then you go to Antarctica and you go like, yeah, this is it. You know, when I was there and I was taking photographs, you just reach a point where you just like, it just seems ridiculous because you can't ever capture the scale and the grandeur of it. It was almost a year ago today that I was there. The idea of, you know, how do I translate that into a painting, I've been thinking about a lot. And so when Alex asked me if I wanted to be interested in climate change as an exhibition, it seemed like the perfect opportunity.
I wanted something you felt like you could experience rather than look at on a wall.
This is an incredibly powerful image for me, probably one of the most striking paintings in the exhibition.
This heroic figure running into the heart of the fire. They're actually trying to save a property here. It really captures everything about the terror and the scale of the fires. So it was really important to paint it on this grand scale, so you could feel as a viewer, you could step into the scene, you're not watching it, you're actually part of it, you can feel the heat from the flames.
Art expresses the inexpressible. I think that's what the most powerful thing about this show is. This is about using image to get through to people and for them to open up the debate and talk about the issue of climate change.
I think we have a voice. Art's always had a voice in what's happening at any particular time.
This is an exhibition that you go to see and you think about things that are greater than you and that are bigger than you. And
it's really important to be humbled, to realise that for all our ingenious inventions, for all that we've achieved, nature is so powerful.
And that's all for this edition of the Environment Quarter. You can always follow me on Twitter, just search for Conor Duffy News, and I'll see you next time.